In this video net interview at IBC 2011, I'm speaking with John O'Brien, CEO at S3 Group. Hello, John.
Good morning, John.
One of the interesting problems with multi-screen that we're thinking about now is that once a service provider has a multi-screen service, they can't help but be responsible for what's happening on the tablets and the smartphones, but there's not a lot of extra money in it. So how are they going to deal with that from a kind of a customer care or support point of view?
That's a good question. Well, firstly, you're absolutely right in terms of some of the operators we're seeing launching iPad applications. They are responsible because they're putting their own iPad applications on the iPad or the tablet, so they are taking on the responsibility from the service perspective. On the other side of it, there's no doubt about it, the more complex devices you place in people's homes, the more support you have to give, and you have to think about generating some real efficiencies in that. And one area that we are working on, I think needs to be addressed, is first of all, the most efficient thing you can do is get a consumer to help themselves. So we have been looking at indications of self-help portals that would allow the user to actually see the status of some of the devices in their own home. And it's interesting, some of the, let's say, the psychological views of it is that people will take 3 steps, and if on the 3rd step they've done something positive, they'll continue to take more steps. So you're actually it's a combination of consumer behavior. So if you give them some self-help portal that allows them to see some of the status on their devices, simple things like, is the smart card in or out? And if they see some progress after 3 steps, they will continue to help themselves. But once you go beyond that, that's the most efficient. The next step is actually they ring your call center, and the worst case, of course, is you send a truck roll. And from our statistics, which we get from talking to a lot of operators, there's a 200 times cost difference between somebody helping themselves on a web portal versus you sending a truck roll. It's like €100 for a truck roll. Typically, if a subscriber calls a call center, the calls last about 12 minutes. It costs about €5 for you as a business to do that call. If they help themselves through your web portal, it's about 50 cents. So the more you can get people up along to helping themselves, the better. But you have to be careful that self-help element does really work. And you're into the 3 steps is interesting. Don't bamboozle people with 12 steps or complex websites. If they're going to make some progress on the self-help, make the progress happen very quickly.
Okay, but self-help is viable, and we can get the economics right for supporting these multi-screen services.
Well, the first thing about when you talk about the multi-screen services, they're always going to be broadband connected. They're not going to be isolated. So of course you have broadband connections to the home gateway and to the connected devices. So in the same way as we can put agents on the boxes to check their status, a user can dial into a web portal, put in their customer ID number, and actually then see a version of the status of their different devices that the call center or the installer or the truck roll person might see. And if you just make that, you need to solve the biggest problems first, and if you can do that in some organized, proper, hierarchical manner that the customer feels comfortable with, you're going to win.
Okay, and I mean, you mentioned the gateways, and the gateways are becoming more complex in themselves. I mean, we're hearing about ones that will now transcode and 4 tuners, and you send it around the home, and Horizon from UBC is a great example. Yeah. I mean, then they're obviously not going to be cheap, and there's more apps on them, etc., than ever before. I mean, is there a role to actually, is it becoming harder to make sure everything works to start with?
Correct, it is. If you think about it, first of all, you've got first thing you have is you've got more devices in the home. As you mentioned, you have gateways, tablets, PCs, set-top boxes, game consoles. That's the first point. And the second thing, they all have to work together. So actually, it's one of the areas we're working on is how do you validate the devices and how they interact with each other before you put them in a consumer's home. And that's a complex challenge. And we're addressing it by automation. I mean, it's the only way. You have to automate the testing and validation of those platforms. Humans can't do it. It would take too long. Humans aren't good at pressing a million buttons and checking the interaction. So yes, there's a huge amount of work to do up front. And by the way, the better you do it up front, the less problems you'll have downstream. It's like any process.
Yeah, and obviously return set-top boxes is a big problem, isn't it? And we've heard before that a lot of the ones that come back, they come back because the engineer just thinks he needs to do something positive for the customer, and he doesn't know what the problem is, but so we'll take the set-top away, and at least they're happy with that. But I mean, it's not a great economic model.
Absolutely, and so one of the biggest challenges pay TV operators have is to avoid Okay, first of all, avoid the truck roll going to the consumer's house in the first place, and you do that by better installing the self-help customer service calls that I described earlier. But actually, once you do send the truck roll, the next worst thing that can happen is they take the box out of the house. And we have found in our market research that actually about 65% of the times in those truck rolls, they take the box away. Only about 35% of times do they actually solve the problem in the home. So you have got all these boxes being put back into a truck, being brought to a repair centre, and a general accepted statistic is that about 40% of those boxes that arrive at the repair centre are found to be what's called no fault found. There's nothing wrong with them. And it takes about €50 to take a box from the front door of a repair centre to the back door, even when you do nothing with it. So, I mean, there's just the logistics, the accounting that it takes to move the box through the repair centre. That's not repairing the box, that's finding out there's nothing wrong with it, taking it back, refurbishing it, and shipping it back out to the field. So there's a huge problem there. But with problems, there's always opportunities. There's opportunities all along the chain. If you make the installation better, if you make the self-help, the call centres more efficient, if you make that truck roll more efficient. In other words, what you'd really like to do is take the repair centre and bring it inside the consumer's home. Now, you can't do that, but we can do a version of that to bring into the home. So solve the problems before you start incurring people and transport costs. But you're right, the repair centres, there's a lot of money being lost in the chain at the moment.
Okay, and just finally, I mean, that piece in the middle between where it comes into the repair centre and goes out, you didn't give a cost for that, but I mean, can you lower the cost of what happens in there in terms of the ones that are faulty?
Absolutely. What we in S3 Group, we've developed a range of products called Decision Line, which are repair centre, specifically for repair centre, and it's bringing. We started developing our products, automating the engineering side of set-top boxes, home gateways, and we quickly applied it to this problem of repair centres, because we have found that currently there is some automation in repair centres, but there's a huge gap. There's a huge opportunity for more automation in repair centres. So currently our systems are testing thousands of boxes a day in typical repair centres, and we're getting some very interesting statistics. And one of the biggest things we're preventing is, okay, you can always spot the no fault found boxes. The other problem is we call it toxic boxes, which is boxes that come in, there's actually something wrong with them, it's not spotted, and they're sent back out to the field again. And you can imagine as a customer, a guy has come in, taken away your box, and actually given you another box that doesn't work. You're in a potential consumer not wanting your service anymore scenario. So there's a couple of subtle problems you can solve by having really good automation in a repair centre. Okay,
and just finally, can you give a figure on what kind of cost reduction you might achieve inside the repair centre itself?
Inside the repair centre, we have seen we can do about 16 times more automation with about half the number of people. Wow. That's the first statistic we have seen coming out of some of our deployments.
Okay, well, that's pretty compelling, so it's probably a good place to end anyway. Okay. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.